Hey everyone, how's it going? I'm gonna be honest, I'm actually really excited about this video because before I was on YouTube, heck, way before that, the way I used to make Pokemon more challenging for myself was to try to beat the game with just bug-type Pokemon. And while Beedrill has abysmal base stat totals, 305 is worse than Nidorino, and actually pretty close to Coughing, which was not a super great Pokemon. That said, Beedrill has a couple things working in its favor. First off, it has Twin Needle. It is only 50 base power. I know it says 25, but it's a double move, so it does 25 then another for 50 total. And it is one of the best and only bug moves in the entire game, the other one being Pin Missile, which is very weak and we're not going to use. The other thing is that it knows Swords Dance. It can learn it via TM. And so while I anticipate the early game being kinda terrible, the late game might be a little bit better than you or I might think. The only way to find out is to just start the run. And as expected, the early game is pretty terrible. Because although Weedle knows Poison Sting, Beedrill cannot actually legitimately learn it. In fact, Beedrill does not learn any Poison-type moves other than Toxic via TM, and that's just a status move. Now, when it comes to Brock, it's actually better that it gets Fury Attack early, since Fury Attack is a multi-hit move, and even though it's a measly 14 base power, if it hits 5 times, even if it's just doing 1, that's potentially 5 damage as opposed to 1 damage. So that's pretty good. At least relatively speaking. Obviously trying to beat Brock with a bug Pokemon knowing a terrible normal move is not going to be a recipe for success. And it took quite a while to beat Brock. The strategy was really simple. Maybe I could have leveled up to level 20, in which case we would have had Twin Needle and it would have gone much better. But I just opted to use Fury Attack. You need to be at a high enough level where Brock can't easily knock you out. And still, it took a couple dozen tries to finally get a run where you win. A big reason for that, and we mentioned this with Hitmonchan as well, Fury Attack like Comet Punch can miss. So we're hoping for critical hits, we're hoping for 5 turns, and we're hoping it doesn't miss. And unfortunately, the only other move we get is Focus Energy, which is worse than nothing. Since if we have Focus Energy as a usable move, then we will lose our ability to get critical hits, which we really need. So just in case we ran out of Fury Attacks, I used up all my Focus Energy power points on Metapods. Thankfully, in the successful battle, we actually didn't need to use Struggle at all. The strategy was be at level 16 and hope for the best. That really was the long and the short of it. And while it took a really long time, we're pretty close to level 20, and once we reach that, we will get access to Twin Needle, and that should speed up the run pretty significantly. However, before that happens, we need to decide whether or not we should battle Misty or Rival 2. Well, considering that Starmie is Psychic type and Twin Needle is super effective, it doesn't make sense to battle Misty without Twin Needle, so I'm going to go battle Rival 2. Unfortunately, our strategy for Rival 2 is exactly the same as our strategy for Brock. Use Fury Attack and hope for the best. Theoretically, I could have maybe gotten Struggle. I don't know if that would have helped, and it would have taken a very long time to run out of all my moves, and there also aren't any Metapod nearby. So yeah, it kinda really sucks to only have Fury Attack as a possible move, not even something like Leer. Pidgeotto gives us the same problems as it always does, with Sand Attack potentially lowering our already terrible accuracy at 85%. Then when it comes to both Pidgeotto and Rattata, you really don't want too many quick attacks. And of course, we have the added randomness of how many times will Fury Attack hit, if it hits at all. And that's why I don't really want to give play-by-play. Sometimes Fury Attack hits 5 times, sometimes it misses 3 times in a row, and sometimes Charmander uses Growl, but thankfully never uses Ember, and we win. Well, while we don't level up immediately after beating Rival 2, after defeating just one more Caterpie, we're going to get Twin Needle, and this is going to speed up the next part exponentially, really. Because something that was very different in Generation 1 than maybe you're used to is Bug and Poison are super effective against each other. Nowadays, Poison is neutral against Bug, and Bug is resisted by Poison. In other words, all the Weedle, Nidoran, Oddish, etc. are very, very weak to Twin Needle. So that's going to make a couple things pretty good, and Bug is not resisted by either rock or ground. So it actually is going to be dealing neutral damage to the Onix we end up battling, making that fight a heck of a lot easier than Brock. And after we defeat all these trainers, I wanted to see if I could defeat Misty. And as it turns out, the answer is yes, but I got a little lucky. Because even at my current level, I'm not going to be outspeeding Starmie, and I'm not going to one-hit KO. So essentially, I needed Starmie not to use Bubble Beam, and it didn't. If it did, I don't know how much damage it would do. Frankly, at this point, I had spent almost as much time getting past Misty as Mewtwo spent beating the entire game. Just to give you a sense of perspective here, so I was perfectly happy just taking my first try victory against Misty and moving on to the rest of the game. Normally, this is the point where I say that we would get Body Slam, and boy, would Body Slam be great for Beedrill to have. Unfortunately, Beedrill can't learn Body Slam. It makes sense, it's a bee. Bees aren't really known for their body slamming abilities. And so we're stuck with Fury Attack being our normal move, and Twin Needle being our everything else move. And when it comes to Rival 3, it is going to be a little easier because we only need to use Fury Attack against the Pidgeotto and the Charmeleon. Speaking of those two Pokemon, that was enough to prevent me from winning for a while. I can't remember the last time I got stuck on Rival 3. I mean, it's happened, but it's been a really long time because usually either Body Slam or some other new move starts to help us. We're a little over leveled and that starts to help us. But nah, here, Beedrill is not very strong. The move still misses a lot. I mean, heck, we haven't even learned Rage yet, which we're going to get at level 25. And just for lulz, I decided to level up using some trainers in the SSN. There's also a rare candy here that I never ever get. And I decided, well, if I never usually get it, and it's been so difficult to this point, might as well get it right now, right? So I do grab that extra rare candy and a bit more experience points, and now I have access to Rage. But surely that's not the move I'm going to use to win. The move that I claimed was the worst move in the entirety of the game. Certainly that isn't... Yeah, that's what I did. I used Rage, but like, it actually was better than Fury Attack in this one instance. Now don't get me wrong, I support putting Rage at number 1. It is a move that locks you into using Rage for the rest of the battle, and you can't use anything else, but I didn't really need to. Yes, it's only 20 base power, but Fury Attack is only 30 base power if it hits twice, which is one of the most common outcomes. This time, at least when I get hit, my attack is steadily increasing, and there's some badge boost glitching going on, raising my attack even further. And yeah, did I get some lucky misses? You betcha, but like, I still got to use Rage in a solo run legitimately to help me win. I don't care what happens for the rest of this run. This is one of my favorite things ever. And honestly, it's at this point the run gets a little bit easier. The biggest reason being the types of Pokemon we're going to face. We're not really going to face any flying or fire Pokemon, so we can just use Twin Needle and win. Against Lieutenant Surge, it takes 2 Twin Needles to knock out Voltorb. Thankfully, it just goes for Screech. Pikachu has pretty abysmal defenses, so we are able to take it out in just a single Twin Needle. And Raichu, unsurprisingly, also too, goes for Thunderbolt. I wasn't even at full health. I still survive, albeit on very low amounts of HP, but I'm able to win on my first try. So, surprisingly, we are actually 2 for 2 in first try victories versus gym leaders. And to be honest, the trainer I was actually most worried about in this section of the game wasn't for a little while gameplay-wise. In Rock Tunnel, because after we finished with Lieutenant Surge, that's where we're going, there is a trainer with 2 Geodude and 1 Graveler, and while it did take me a couple tries, I was able to defeat him with Twin Needle. The big concern is self-destruct. Rock Throw as well, but it can miss 40% of the time. And thankfully, even with being at pretty low HP by the end, I was able to make it through, and that brings us all the way to Celadon City. Usually, I will go to the Rocket Game Corner first, but today, with a bug Pokemon with a bug move, the absolute easiest way to get through this section is to defeat Erika. No forgetting Erika for me. We are going in the intended Nintendo-approved order, and beating her is really, really easy. Since Bug is super effective against both grass and poison, Beedrill is a one-hit KO or 2 hits of Twin Needle. I'm just going to say one-hit KO going forward. Tangela, though, is not, and this will scare you guys. It gets off Constrict. Another one of the worst moves in Generation 1 according to my list, so not a big deal. Vileplume is also unsurprisingly a one-hit KO. We're at a similar level, but with a 4-time super effective move. This was an absolute joke. And the reason I wanted to defeat Erika was not just to gain some experience points, and so I didn't forget her, but also to use a move that I don't think most people would think to use on a Beedrill, but actually proved super useful going forward. And that's Mega Drain. Surprisingly, Beedrill can learn Mega Drain, and Mega Drain will help substantially in the next section. Giovanni has 2 rock ground Pokemon, Onix and Rhyhorn. Both of them are one-shot by Mega Drain. Kangaskhan, on the other hand, was a 4-hit KO with Twin Needle. And it's at this point that we're starting to see that Twin Needle might not be as good as we'd hoped. I mean, early game a 50 base power move, really good. But now we're entering the mid-game. And we're not going to be encountering too many grass Pokemon, and the poison Pokemon we're about to face are stronger defensively. And so we're going to need a better move going forward. And thankfully, in the Rocket Hideout Game Corner, whatever you want to call it, there is a pretty good move available, albeit one that's a bit of a mixed blessing. And that move is Double Edge. We haven't used it too much in runs because of the recoil damage. A quarter of the damage you deal is sent right back to you, which is better than half, which is what Struggle does, but still, that's not great. As we said earlier though, Beedrill doesn't have that option. In fact, Beedrill has very, very few options in terms of moves in general. So we're going to have to use Double Edge, and against Rival 4, I would have liked it to have knocked out Pidgeotto in one hit. It does not. Very close, but not yet. Thankfully, Pidgeotto goes for Whirlwind, and I'm able to knock it out, but this is the reason I don't like Double Edge. We still have an HP loss, even though it never attacked me. Execute is a weak Grass Psychic Pokemon. We don't even need the second hit of Twin Needle to knock it out. Now, Gyarados, no way is Double Edge gonna win. Oh, well, if I get a crit, it will, but that was just a little lucky. Whatever, that's 3 down. The next is Kadabra, and just like Execute, not much to worry about there. Finally, we have Charmeleon for the final time before it evolves. I actually misclick and go for Agility, which, yes, will raise my attack by a little bit, but was not what I wanted to do. Thankfully, I'm able to survive Charmeleon's attack. I go for Double Edge, and I'm able to survive recoil damage. And so for the first time in a long time, Rival 4 wasn't just a complete walk in the park. I actually probably could have lost, especially if I didn't get that lucky crit on Gyarados. And if you think the game is getting a little bit more difficult now, well, it's about to get really difficult. In a second, we still have to do the Pokemon Tower. Twin Needle, because of the super effectiveness against poison, luckily the ghosts aren't going to be a problem. Once we finish up, we need to make a decision. And it's a tough call. Koga had some Psychic Pokemon in his gym, and his Poison Pokemon, we already mentioned they're going to be high defense. Rival 5 has a Pidgeot, a Charizard, and a Gyarados, and we had trouble with some of those at lower levels just now. How the heck am I going to do either of those? Well, you might think it's level up, but actually the answer is even easier than that. All we need to do is go to Silph Company first, get the card key, and go to the 7th floor. We can then unlock Swords Dance. And with that, the run has changed forever. we can use 3 of them to maximize Beedrill's attack. For so many of these runs, we opt to use moves like Withdraw, Harden, Agility, just to gain tiny 12% boosts in our attack. Well, now we're gaining a 100% boost each time we use it. Unfortunately, that's not going to be enough for Rival Fivel right now. The fact of the matter is, he's still simply too strong. I was barely able to make it past Pidgeot, let alone the rest of his Pokemon, and I did get a little bit of bad luck. He could use either Agility, a Psychic move, or Wing Attack, a Flying move, and I got a lot of Wing Attack. That's just bad luck, but Koga probably will be a heck of a lot easier, considering he doesn't really have anything too scary. For my first battle, I'm going to set up a single Swords Dance against Coughing. Thankfully, it just goes for Tackle, no accuracy drop, and let's see how it goes. The Coughing gets knocked out in one hit. The Muck, however, does not, but I got a critical hit, which is actually slightly weaker than Swords Dance because it doesn't incorporate Badge Boost glitch. I know, Gen 1 is really weird. Muck does use Minimize, which wouldn't be great, but I thankfully am able to knock it out without taking any more damage. Coughing number 2 has the exact same stats as Coughing number 1, and the big question is, if I don't get a crit, which I don't, I still don't knock out Wheezing. Thankfully, it goes for X attack and not self-destruct, and so while I didn't think it would, first try victory against Koga is pretty good, under leveled too. And with this victory, hopefully marks a bit of an easing of the difficulty that we've been facing recently, but the big test is obviously going to be Rival Fivel. Well, I do use rare candy, so I'm at level 45. I go for a single Swords Dance. Pidgeot goes for Wing Attack. It's still doing about a quarter of my HP, which isn't great. I go for Double Edge and it knocks it out, so that's pretty great. Although, unfortunately, I'm at about half HP for the remaining Pokemon. That isn't great, to be quite honest. I can use Twin Needle against Execute, which is still just as easy as ever. Just like last time, I get a critical hit against Gyarados, and that may have actually cost me a KO. So the critical hit giveth, and the critical hit taketh away. Thankfully, we get the Retroactive Potion. God, I love Gen 1. And because he's still using potions, we're able to use Twin Needle to knock out Gyarados. 45 HP for Alakazam and Charizard. Will we outspeed Alakazam, though? We do, and it's a one-hit KO. Don't even need the second hit of Twin Needle. And the secondary question is, will we one-shot Charizard? And will we have enough HP to survive recoil damage? The answer, well, no and yes, but of course it uses Ember and knocks me out. That sucks. That could have been a range, but yeah, that really sucks. Now, because it was so close and I saved before using my rare candies, I'm able to quickly gain another level by battling one of the other rockets. And so I'm at level 46, and I'm assuming we're going to do the exact same thing, but one-shot the Charizard this time. So far, we're getting the exact same results. Swords Dance, Wing Attack, Double Edge, 75 HP this time, so we've got a little bit more of a buffer, but I don't think that's going to make too big a difference. Execute is still Execute, so that's 2 down. And now I want to know if I'll knock out the Gyarados if I don't get the crit. The answer is it's possible. I mean, we do here, we are a level higher, but I think considering how much HP it had with the crit, we can say the crit definitely mattered last time. So that is 3 down. Obviously, we're still going to outspeed Alakazam now that we're even faster. So all that's left is the Charizard. And okay, pretty good. So we have now gotten past what I thought would be one of the biggest obstacles for a little while. Giovanni is not going to be so tough. We are going to heal this time, unlike in the last video. And the only Pokemon that could prove problematic is Nidoqueen. Otherwise, I don't really foresee Giovanni being too difficult. And now I need to make a decision. Both gym leaders know super effective moves against Beedrill, but Blaine, I'm not very effective against, at least with Twin Needle. And his Pokemon are a higher level, despite the fact that usually Blaine's actually easier than Sabrina. And I just realized this might be the first video in the history of my channel that I'm going in order, the actual proper order in Generation 1. That's insane. Now, the big question with Sabrina is speed. I don't have agility anymore. This moveset of Twin Needle, Swords Dance, Double Edge, and Mega Drain has served me very well, so I don't want to mess with it. So let's just hope I outspeed the Kadabra and things should be fine. And we do. This is actually really good because the Mr. Mime only has Confusion as an attacking move, and it knows Barrier and Reflect, which I don't want to see. So I'm going to go for Swords Dance, and that should give me enough speed and enough attack to easily knock out everything else. We get Barrier. This shouldn't be a problem because, yes, with the Swords Dance, we're able to knock out Mr. Mime. Venomoth might be... It wasn't. Okay, I was worried it would be a problem, but it isn't. And so long as we outspeed the Alakazam, we'll be good, and we are. And that is Sabrina. Not difficult, actually. Surprisingly. Okay, so now we move on to Blaine. Blaine's first Pokemon, Growlithe, has Agility and Ember. We want Agility, and we should be good. So I'm going to go for Swords Dance, it goes for Ember. I'm going to go for a second Swords Dance, it goes for Ember. So this is probably a loss. I don't have enough HP to use Double Edge more than once. So I'm going to have to use Twin Needle, and okay, well, we knock out Growlithe, that's really good. But the same thing's going to have to happen to Ponyta, and it does. Now, I'm obviously not going to knock out the Rapidash, which sucks. And so we're probably going to have to reset here, fire... Oh, it misses. Okay. So, yeah, we can knock out Rapidash, and now, hopefully, Double Edge will knock out Arcanine. It does, and we survive recoil damage, which is really good, and that is 7 gym leaders down. Not bad at all. And as for Giovanni, I'm not really worried about him at all. We have Mega Drain, and then we can set up a bunch of Swords Dance against Rhyhorn, which can't really do much. This should be really easy. I'm not even fully healed from the trainers in Giovanni's gym. I barely have any HP left. I'm going to set up a Swords Dance. Guard Spec is fine. I'm going to set up another Swords Dance. Tail Whip is okay as well. And Stomp. Okay, well, I should gain back all my HP, and it doesn't really matter. We win anyway. All right, well, here's Dugtrio. There's Dugtrio. Here's Nidoqueen. So long, Nidoqueen. Don't even need the second hit. Nidoking has worse defense, so no issue there. And Rhydon, do we want to use Twin Needle or Mega Drain? Curious how much Twin Needle will do, and it does about 2/3. That's not bad. Rhydon doesn't have anything that can hit me, I don't think. So we're just going to knock it out here, and that is 8 gym battles down. And I'm not going to lie, this has been one of the most difficult 8 gym battles I've had in a very long time. That said, typically, it is the next 6 battles that prove way more challenging. And it's going to start with rival number 6. Similar to rival 5, but there is one thing that might make it a lot easier for me. I lead with a Swords Dance, and Pidgeot goes for Agility. Now I'm going to go for Double Edge, but of course, since Pidgeot boosted its speed, it gets to go. Goes for another Agility. Unfortunately, Double Edge does not knock it out. Now in this battle, Rhyhorn is the next Pokemon, and this is great because even if Rhyhorn attacks me, which it does, I'm going to be able to set up 2 Swords Dance, then go for Mega Drain and gain most, if not all, of my HP back, plus I'll be at max attack. This went absolutely perfectly. So I'm at full health for the rival's 4 remaining Pokemon. One of them is an Execute, which, I mean, yeah, pretty damn easy. Unfortunately, we get some bad luck versus Gyarados. I go for Double Edge and get a critical hit, so it does less damage than it would otherwise. Thank you, Gen 1. It goes for Bite, so that's kind of nice. I'm able to knock it out. I should be fine to Double Edge the Charizard, assuming I don't get a critical hit. But wait, we level up. And now we're not going to outspeed Alakazam. It thankfully goes for Reflect. The reason we would have before is due to the Badge Boost glitch, where our speed is increased by 12.5% every Swords Dance. That effect is canceled when we level up. But the increases to Swords Dance, those stay. Those are supposed to be there. But I could have used a rare candy to avoid that situation had I lost, which, spoiler alert, I do not, because I do not get the critical hit, and I'm able to knock out Charizard, and so Rival 6 surprisingly is a first try victory. I don't think the champion will be quite as easy, especially because instead of Rhyhorn coming out second, it's going to be this Alakazam, meaning we need to be fast enough to outspeed it right off the hop. Stressful times indeed, But before we can even get to the champion, we have 4 more trainers, elite trainers, an elite 4, if you will. So for Lorelei, Dugong once again is going to prove quite useful. And this is because Lorelei has good AI. I've discussed this, but just to reiterate, good AI will always use moves classified as super effective every single time they can. And it doesn't matter whether the move is a status move or a damaging move. Dugong has Rest, a psychic move, Beedrill is part poison, so Dugong will constantly go for Rest. This allows me to set up as many sword stance as I want, and I'll be able to knock out the Dugong. Or so I thought. In fact, Twin Needle did not 1-hit KO Dugong. And I guess using a 50 base power move while under leveled at this point of the game, even with 3 swords dance, not gonna cut it. So of course against Cloyster it's not gonna knock it out. Cloyster is one of the bulkiest defensive Pokemon in the entire game. I was curious how much a Twin Needle would do, and it comes pretty close to knocking it out. I'd say about 3/4. It goes for Clamp, which could have been bad, but thankfully only hits twice, and I'm able to knock it out. Now Slowbro, we should knock it out in maybe 1 hit, but even if we don't, Slowbro knows Amnesia and no damaging psychic move, so like Dugong, it is completely harmless to us, and once we knock it out, we will be able to face Jinx, who we will outspeed, and even without the Swords Dance, probably would one-shot because of its low defense. And then we have Lapras, and the only chance I have at one-shotting is to use Double Edge, which despite the fact it's not my type, it still does a bunch more damage. And would you look at that, it was able to one-shot the Lapras. Lapras is pretty decent defensively, so that's a good sign. So that's Lorelei down, not too difficult, but I do think there are ways of optimizing this battle, assuming we have to do it again. And a plan is something I already had for Bruno, something that I thought would be pretty easy to implement and extremely consistent. And here it is. Against the first Onix, I'm going to set up 3 Swords Dance, and the Onix is going to damage me quite a bit, maybe. Whether it does or doesn't, I'm just going to use Mega Drain, and I should gain all that HP right back. I'll then be able to use Double Edge against both Hitmonchan and Hitmonlee, easily 1-hit KOing them, assuming I don't get a critical hit, and I believe Hitmonlee still might be a 1-hit KO, even if I do, which is pretty good. Now, because of all that recoil damage, we're going to be low on HP, but thankfully, Onix number 2 is right around the corner for us to use Mega Drain, gain it all back, and use Double Edge on Machamp, one-shotting it, and making Bruno super easy. Now we have the Agatha lottery, but it's not going to be as big a lottery as before, since we don't actually need to use Mimic to get Hypnosis or anything like that. All we need to do is set up some Swords Dance and then sweep through her team with Twin Needle. Now, because this was my first attempt, I was curious how much Twin Needle would do to Gengar without Swords Dance, and unfortunately she swapped to Golbat, which is really weird seeing a Bug-type move being normal effective against Golbat, but I don't know, Gen 1. Now, based on that damage, I'm going to need to set up at least 1 Swords Dance, so I do, and she swaps back into Gengar. I then go for Twin Needle, and while it does very good damage, it doesn't knock out Gengar, and it gets off a Confuse Ray. So with the Swords Dance, that's likely going to be the end of this battle, and I'm going to need to set up 2 Swords Dance going forward, but let's continue. I haven't hit myself in confusion yet, so I do knock out the Gengar. Now I level up, so any speed increases I got from the Swords Dance are going to be negated, but the attack's going to still be there, and I'm going to be able to knock out Golbat. That's 2 down. Now I don't need this for attack. This was an instance of me trying to gain just a little bit of speed. I am going to use Swords Dance against the Haunter, and it goes for Dream Eater. That was pretty lucky. As you can tell, I'm sort of mailing this one in and just seeing how exactly I should tackle this going forward, but I'm able to knock out the Haunter anyway, and that's just 2 Pokemon remaining. Well, with 3 Swords Dance, Arbok doesn't even withstand the first hit of Twin Needle, and now the question is, do I outspeed the level 60 Gengar? It can't put me to sleep, but it can confuse me. With some Swords Dance set up, that could be pretty devastating. Well, the good news is I outspeed the Gengar. The bad news is I get a critical hit, and then the good news is it goes for Dream Eater, and we're able to defeat it. So in my very first attempt, I've made it all the way to Lance. Not bad at all, but Lance once again is going to be quite challenging. As with the 2 Hitmon Pokemon, we're going to have a situation where Lance's Dragonair and Dragonite will just spam either agility or barrier in Dragonite's case, potentially, and so we don't need to worry about them. But we do need to worry about both Gyarados and, in this case, Aerodactyl. At least for Gyarados, Double Edge is going to deal neutral damage, but for Aerodactyl, both Twin Needle and Double Edge are going to be resisted by it, which is not a very good thing. First things first though, can we tank a hit from the Gyarados? How much damage do we deal with one Swords Dance? These are the questions I needed answered, and we're going to find out right now. Gonna set up a Swords Dance, it goes for Leer and it fails. That is the best case scenario. I then go for Double Edge, and it's doing about 3/4 with one Swords Dance, so we're going to need to set up 2. Gyarados goes for Leer again, so I got incredibly good luck versus the Gyarados. We're going to be able to knock it out, and at this point, we pretty much just need to wait for Aerodactyl. I can set up the 2 remaining Swords Dance to gain extra attack, but the real question is, can I knock out Aerodactyl with either of my moves? Now, this was an instance of me just really overthinking things and worrying about recoil damage. I'm not sure why. I wanted to use Double Edge against Dragonite. Twin Needle didn't do nearly enough. I mean, both moves are resisted. What a strange choice on my part. I don't think Double Edge would have knocked it out, mind you, with the damage that Twin Needle did. And there was a chance of poison. Aerodactyl goes for Hyper Beam, and with a Leer, that is goodbye. Now, by no means is this devastating. I was just trying to test out a bunch of things, and getting past Agatha on my first attempt felt pretty good. Hopefully, that will be a sign of things to come. Now, I did have some rare candies left, so in my next battle, I wanted to see how it would go if I used all those rare candies and started at level 57. Right off the bat, there are some problems, and while Dugong is now a 1-hit KO with Twin Needle, Cloyster, even if I do use Double Edge, which does more damage, isn't quite a 1-hit KO. It looks like it might be a range, if at all. It's hard to tell, obviously, with just one attack. Cloyster surviving is problematic because it can attack me back, lower my HP. That's not ideal. But so long as it doesn't do too much damage, we will be able to knock out easily the Cloyster, the Slowbro, and we could use Mega Drain if we needed to. The Jinx, and Lapras we got a critical hit. It used Blizzard, and we still managed to get past Lapras, so that's pretty good. And we can make our way to Bruno, which I don't need to say anything more about. Bruno is going to be nearly identical. Of these first 3 members, Agatha is the only one that I have a bit of a concern with, because I do need to set up those 2 Swords Dance. In my very next battle against her, she goes for Nightshade twice, which, while damaging me quite a bit, isn't a huge problem because with 2 Swords Dance set up, every single one of her Pokemon ends up being a 1-hit KO, and we outspeed every single one. We don't level up in the middle, so that's all really good news. That said, we did defeat these 3 members our first time around. The real question is whether these increase in levels will actually help versus Lance, either as Gyarados or, more importantly, as Aerodactyl. Ideally, we'd be in a situation that one Swords Dance would be able to knock out Gyarados, and I try that. It goes for Dragon Rage, which is fine. I go for Double Edge, and it doesn't look to be doing significantly more damage, despite the fact I'm multiple levels higher. Thankfully, I get a Leer, and I'm able to knock it out, but yeah, these increase in levels are not making a difference in a Pokemon where it really matters. That is quite a bit of a problem. Perhaps the more important question is whether or not a Double Edge will be enough to knock out Aerodactyl after 3 Swords Dance. We can set up the additional 2 against Dragonair, as I mentioned before, and I tried Twin Needle last time, so I don't even know at my old level whether it would have knocked it out. I have a feeling it wouldn't have, but now I'm at level 60. I go for Double Edge, and it doesn't quite do enough. I don't even think this is a range. I think I need to level up a little bit more. We get the retroactive Hyper Potion, giving me a second opportunity to see if maybe we can get a 1-hit KO, but we do not. This time Aerodactyl goes for Hyper Beam, and now we are 0 for 2 versus Lance. Well, because using the rare candies earlier didn't really help against the 3 previous members, I thought maybe it would be wise to use them after Agatha. And because it takes more and more experience points to level up as you get higher in level, I was hoping that maybe I could be at level 61 and that one additional level would help me out. Unfortunately, it didn't work out that way. I think I was about 600 experience points short of being at level 61, which was annoying. And once again, we had an opportunity to try and double edge the Aerodactyl, and that didn't work again. So like I suspected, I don't think this is actually a range. I think I can't deal enough damage, and because I tend to be at rather low HP after Gyarados, the Aerodactyl doesn't really need to be too picky with what it uses in order to knock me out, in this case going for Takedown. A Takedown miss, Hyper Beam miss, or Supersonic miss obviously would result in a victory, but the odds of that aren't super great. There's also a possibility that Gyarados actually attacks you with Hyper Beam, and at least in this case he got a critical hit and knocked me out. And I will say losing to Lance again and again is a little more frustrating than Agatha, because although it's somewhat consistent beating all these trainers, Agatha still won about 40% of the time. She just needed to hit with Hypnosis or Confuse Ray and me hit myself a few times. Thankfully, I did only need 2 turns of setup and I was good for the entire battle pretty much. But that's still plenty of opportunity for her trolley Pokemon to annoy the heck out of me. And after all that, we just get another shot at Lance where, as we can see, a Hydro Pump and probably Hyper Beam would not one-shot. But the problem is, setting up 2 Swords Dance or using 2 Double Edge is that even if Gyarados uses a good move like Dragon Rage, you just simply can't survive the recoil damage once you knock out Gyarados. And then it's right back to the drawing board, but eventually, I did actually make it past Lance. But the way I did it, I wasn't thrilled with. I ended up deleting Twin Needle for Mimic so that I could mimic Hyper Beam, speaking of which. Well, at least now Gyarados has to recharge, and like I said earlier, we do easily survive a non-critical hit Hyper Beam. With Hyper Beam, I don't need to worry about recoil damage, and it is 50 base power more powerful than Double Edge, so it should easily knock out Aerodactyl so long as I don't get a critical hit. The only issue is, once we get to the champion, we won't have use of Twin Needle, and there are 2 Pokemon in specific, Alakazam as well as Executor, where Twin Needle would be useful. You see, if Mimic were Hyper Beam, that would be great. The problem is Hyper Beam is only located in the Rocket Game Corner, and you need 5,500 coins. Even if I had the money, buying 5,500 coins would take several minutes of in-game time because of all the text boxes. It isn't until Generation 2 that you can start buying coins in multiple 500 as opposed to just 50. I hated this as a kid. And this leaves Double Edge as realistically Beedrill's most powerful move that it can ever really get without using Mimic. And I don't even know if this strategy is going to be viable, because I'm not going to have enough HP for recoil damage, so I think. I mean, whatever, we did make it to the champion, it's taken me a long time. Let's see how this goes. So, I don't think I'm going to knock out Pidgeot in a single Double Edge, so I'm going to go for Swords Dance, and it goes for Sky Attack. This is good that it didn't attack me, but I need to attack now or I will surely be knocked out. Unfortunately, while I do a lot of damage, it does not knock out Pidgeot, and, well, yeah. Unfortunately, it would take me a very long time to make it back to the champion. I just simply would lose to Lance over and over and over again. Well, sometimes I'd lose to Agatha as well. There just was too many things that could go wrong, and I recognized it was time to level up. So I try again at level 57, at least with Lorelei. And this does a couple things kind of useful. Cloyster now is no longer a range, and I can reliably one-hit KO. So that's kind of nice. I mean, even if Cloyster attacked me, it usually wasn't the end of the world. The only real obstacle remaining in this fight is whether or not I'd critical hit the Lapras. So realistically, did the level ups help too much in this fight? I wouldn't say that, but they definitely helped a little bit. Bruno is still as easy as ever, so I don't really need any levels for Bruno. But with Agatha, theoretically, I might be able to get away with one less Swords Dance. It does do enough to knock out the first Gengar, but it doesn't, at least with Twin Needle, to knock out Golbat. Now, I could have used Double Edge, and I probably should have. I have more than enough HP. I was curious whether Twin Needle would do the trick. It didn't, and it probably won't be enough to knock out the second Gengar as well, which is unfortunate. In the end, funny enough, it didn't actually matter because I got a critical hit against the second Gengar, and it went for Dream Eater, so it's all good. But even if I'd used that second Swords Dance, it wouldn't have done anything anyway. So we're finally back at Lance, and you can see we're quite a bit higher level. And the key here is being able to one-shot with Double Edge and not have to use Mimic. Because I just don't think that's a viable strategy for the champion, although it would have been nice to test it out at least. Anyway, the battle starts off as badly as possible. I get hit by Hyper Beam right away. At least this will give me ample time to set up my Swords Dance. And so long as I don't get a critical hit, which I don't, I knock out Gyarados. Now, unfortunately, because I'm at 34 health, I do need to use some Mega Drains to gain a little bit of HP back. And this is another reason I've kept Mega Drain. It is a very good last resort move. Sure, I guess I could have replaced it with something like Rest against Dragonair, but Mega Drain will serve a purpose in the champion battle. Rest really wouldn't have. And Rest also sucks. Anyway, after we've gained enough HP back, and I wasn't really sure exactly how much I needed for Aerodactyl, we can knock out both Dragonair and hope for the best. Well, at level 64, although it may be a range, I am finally able to one-shot Aerodactyl. So if nothing else, while these level ups didn't help in many places, it's at least helping me not have to use Mimic, so that's pretty nice. But unfortunately, because my health is so low, I'm going to have to rely on Twin Needle, hopefully a Poison, to get rid of Dragonite, and so that's going to take a little bit longer than I'd like. Realistically, I'd love not to be hit by Hyper Beam, but another useful byproduct of being at a higher level is more defense, more HP, and being able to take more hits, have more health for recoil. Being at a higher level is better. I mean, I don't need to convince you on that, but there are times where I worry I'm over-leveling or being too cautious. I think this battle proves that I did the right amount of leveling, maybe. Because the other thing we saw last time was that I didn't knock out Pidgeot with a single Swords Dance and Double Edge. That would be super important to do. And since I've only battled the champion once, I have no idea if at this new level I'll be able to. Realistically, of course, there's only one way to find out, so let's find out. Alright, so I go for Swords Dance, and it mirror moves Swords Dance, which can be a problem, because now it has super high attack. I'm going to go for Double Edge here, and unless it goes for Sky Attack, I'm in a lot of trouble. Even Wing Attack may knock me out, although base 35 power, I don't know. Moment of truth, do we knock it out? No, not even close. I feel like I did just about as much damage last time. How could that be? I'm such a higher level. Wow, I guess Beedrill just doesn't have that great attack. Anyway, it mirror moves Double Edge, and it's normal type, so yeah. Great, I have made it to the champion twice, and I've defeated 0 of his Pokemon. Fantastic. Just simply fantastic. And this is probably the longest I've gone in a really long time without ever defeating a champion's Pokemon. Typically, with a lot of these more difficult runs, and to be fair, this isn't super difficult. We're in like the medium difficulty right now. Usually I've made it to the champion and I've lost a few times in heartbreaking ways because, let's face it, the champion's team is pretty tough. With Beedrill, it was pretty easy, but I make sure the champion is as difficult as possible by picking the starter strongest against my Pokemon. For the last 3 runs, it's been Charizard, who, all things equal, I do think might be one of the more difficult Pokemon to face because you have both Gyarados and Exeggutor that knows Hypnosis, and that can be a really big problem. Exeggutor, while it has terrible moves, does have good stats, so this battle can be really, really tough. And it is very frustrating after spending like an hour at the Elite Four. Sure, I'm at a higher level now, and I haven't been at this level for too long, and that's probably something I should mention. When do I give up and just level up? Which, by the way, I've mentioned this before. I'll just simply go through the Elite Four, make sure I don't learn any moves, don't use any of my potions or elixirs, and just gain experience points that way. It usually is a pretty fast and efficient way of gaining experience points, and I think I did it once or twice. I can't remember how many times. But there is a really, difficult decision. When do I just give in? Because I know that will cost me in-game time and levels. Am I just getting unlucky that I haven't won? Or am I trying to rely on getting lucky to win? In a game that has a lot of luck, it's hard to make that decision. But I think based on the last run, and frankly this run as well, I have made the correct decision. A lot of the things that were question marks, like KOing the Cloister, Gyarados' survivability, and knocking out Aerodactyl with the double edge, all those things weren't possible at my previous level. While I wasn't able to one-shot Pidgeot with one Swords Dance, I have taken a lot of other mystery factors out of the way, and there is still a chance I could knock out Pidgeot if it gives me some good luck. Relying on a little bit of luck is fine, but to avoid relying on too much luck, that's why I don't save in between Elite Four members, at least not for this challenge. Anytime you see me do that, for example in my Ditto run, you know we're dealing with an incredibly difficult challenge. One so difficult that the question of whether or not it's even possible is something being raised. As opposed to here where we know we're going to defeat the Elite Four, the question is how fast and at how low level can we do it? Well, we've made it back to Lance, and this time things go a lot better, and this is a much smoother Lance battle. Gyarados once again does go for Hyper Beam, but this time we get the 10% chance that it misses. And that's great, because this way we don't have to waste our time using Mega Drains on Dragonair, and potentially could have used Double Edge against both Aerodactyl and Dragonite. I was a little cautious. I didn't know exactly how much recoil damage I would take. So once again, I opted to go for Twin Needle. Cost a little bit of time, but as we can probably tell at this point, it takes a while to get back here. So you know what? Once I get this opportunity, I'd prefer not to mess it up. And for the third time, we've made it to the champion. However, we have yet to KO a single one of his Pokemon. And the truth is, I just need Sky Attack at the right time or Mirror Move at the right time, and we will be able to do this. The question is, will Pidgeot cooperate with me? Let's find out. So like always, I'm going to set up a Swords Dance, and it goes for Wing Attack. But now I started to worry about Alakazam. Will I outspeed it? We already know we're not going to knock out Pidgeot in one hit. Well, if it goes for Mirror Move here, it'll only Mirror Move Swords Dance if I use it, so I go for it. It goes for Sky Attack, and I think we might have a run here. I'm going to go for Double Edge. Pray no critical hits. All right, that's good. One down. For the first time, we've actually made it to Alakazam. Will we outspeed? Yes. Thankfully, I'm using Twin Needle now, so I don't have to worry about the recoil damage because it would have been very low HP. And I would like to set up a third Swords Dance against the Rhydon that can deal enough damage that if I were at like 20 HP, I could faint. Now, I do level up here, so I don't have the added speed from the first two Swords Dance. I'm only going to get the speed from this Swords Dance. It goes for Horn Drill. That's excellent. And now we're going to go for Mega Drain. I don't know if this will one-shot. It does not. Not even that close. And it goes for Fury Attack. Okay, 3 times isn't too bad. Hopefully I can gain back a lot of HP here. Okay, 162 HP. I think that should be good for recoil. Obviously, critical hits will be a huge concern going forward, but I think I have enough to use Double Edge as many times as I'd like. I don't need to use it here, though. I think even a critical hit won't matter. I'm going for Twin Needle, and once again, don't even need the second hit. Executor is pretty good stats, but yeah, max attack, Twin Needle, not surprised. Okay, Gyarados, again. Please no crit, please no crit. Yes, okay. But if you remember the Hitmonlee run, I'm not getting excited yet because this is when we get the critical hit right against the Charizard, and then the Pokeball Factory music plays, and oh, or not. We won. Let's go. I mean, you know what? Honestly, this was definitely a little bit more relief than excitement. And the reason is, Beedrill actually had pretty solid strategies against almost every Pokemon and every trainer, to be honest. There were just a couple problem spots. And in terms of real time, it didn't take me nearly as long as the last few. In terms of in-game time, though, Beedrill struggled early on, and that helps explain its somewhat mediocre 541 finish time. I mean, that's not bad. Because Brock was a big source of time loss, I'm going to put Beedrill in the same tier as Hitmonchan. In fact, I actually think it was a little easier than Hitmonchan. So Beedrill right now finds itself in 16th place. Obviously, this tier list is kind of for fun and not meant to be taken super seriously. And, you know, if I were to do these again and again, perhaps we'd come up with a bit more scientific method. But I think it gives an overall idea of the difficulty level of the Pokemon we've had so far. And that is 36 of the 150 Pokemon. But for the foreseeable future, Brilliant Diamond, Shining Pearl are coming out, and I do want to do some solo runs in the newer games. This will be the first time that my first playthrough is going to be a solo run, and you can check it out on twitch.tv/jrose11. I do some Mario speedruns as well, but for now, we're going to be playing a little bit of Brilliant Diamond, Shining Pearl. So if that's something you're interested in, be sure to give me a follow if you want. And I'll see you all pretty soon. Lots of content coming, and I hope you enjoy. Thanks, everyone. Take care.